In the heart of Florence, Italy, there was a grand mansion that looked like it had come straight out of a history book. Its walls were lined with golden frames, antique furniture, and priceless decorations. This mansion was home to one of the richest art collectors in the city, a man who had spent decades building a collection of rare and expensive paintings. Among all the treasures, there was one painting that he was particularly proud of. It had just arrived at the mansion after a private auction, and everyone was talking about it. The collector claimed it was a lost masterpiece, worth $300 million. People whispered that it was one of the most important art pieces of the century. Among the staff of the mansion was a maid and her teenage daughter. The daughter was quiet, observant, and had a gift for languages. She had grown up listening to her mother speak Italian, French, and a little English, and she had learned quickly. More than just languages, she had an unusual interest in art. She loved looking at paintings, noticing the tiniest details that others often missed. She didn't have formal training, but she had an eye for patterns, colors, and strokes. She could spend hours just watching a painting and imagining how it was made. When the new painting arrived, the atmosphere in the mansion changed. The collector was thrilled, showing it to everyone with pride. He invited friends and important people to see the masterpiece. The mansion staff moved carefully around it, dusting the furniture, polishing the floors, and making sure everything looked perfect. The daughter, however, was more curious than excited. She noticed something that no one else seemed to see. There was a small detail in the painting's brushwork that looked different from the artist's usual style. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it caught her eye. She spent time in the quiet corners of the mansion, sketching the painting in her notebook and comparing it to pictures of other works by the same artist she had seen in books and online. She noticed the lines were sharper in some places, softer in others, and some colors didn't match the original palette the artist usually used. She frowned as she studied it. Something about it felt off. The more she looked, the more convinced she became that the painting might not be real. The daughter didn't say anything at first. She knew the collector was proud and sensitive about his acquisitions. Challenging him could lead to trouble for her mother and the rest of the staff. Still, the more she observed, the more questions she had. Why had the painting appeared at a private auction instead of a museum? Why did the certificate of authenticity seem too perfect, almost like it had been prepared in a hurry? Her mind raced with possibilities. She had read stories about art forgery, about fake paintings being sold for millions, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this might be one of those cases. Every day, she continued to study the painting. She would take notes on tiny details, the way light and shadow played across the canvas, and the texture of the paint. She memorized the small flaws, the inconsistencies, and even the shape of the signature in the corner. She began to notice that the brushstrokes didn't match the artist's known technique. The signature was slightly different from the ones she had seen in books. She started to feel a mix of excitement and fear. If she was right, she could expose something huge. But if she was wrong, she could get herself and her mother into serious trouble. The mansion was always full of visitors, important people from the art world, wealthy collectors, and even journalists at times. They would walk past the painting, whispering about its value and the story behind it. No one noticed the small details the daughter had been studying. They were too busy being impressed by the fame and the price tag. She wished she could tell someone, but she had no idea who would listen to a teenage maid's daughter. Still, the thought of keeping silent made her uneasy. She had a feeling that if she stayed quiet, the truth might be hidden forever. One evening, when the mansion was quiet, she stayed late after her chores. She brought her notebook and a small flashlight and examined the painting closely. The light highlighted tiny cracks and uneven paint layers that were unusual for a painting of that age and value. She compared it to photographs of the artist's authentic works she had found in the city library and online archives. Her heart raced as she realized how different this painting was. The more she studied, the more convinced she became that it was a forgery. Her mind ran through the possibilities. How could such a mistake happen in a world where experts verified every detail? How could a collector, as experienced as the one she worked for, be fooled? Despite her fear, she started planning how she could prove it. She thought about visiting local museums and speaking to art historians, learning everything she could about the artist's technique. She wanted to gather enough knowledge to confidently speak out when the time came. Her nights became filled with research, sketching, and notes. She learned to recognize the smallest signs that experts looked for: the direction of brushstrokes, the layering of colors, and the tiny imperfections that indicated genuine work. Each discovery made her more certain, but also more anxious. She knew that exposing a $300 million forgery was not something to take lightly. As days passed, she began observing the collector more closely. She noticed how he bragged about the painting to his friends and seemed almost nervous when discussing its history. Something about his behavior made her question his knowledge about the piece. Was he truly convinced it was real, or was there something he wasn't telling anyone? Her curiosity grew stronger. She wanted to find out how a painting of such value could end up in the wrong hands. She realized that the story behind the painting could be just as important as the artwork itself. The daughter also paid attention to the staff and visitors. Some were loyal to the collector and praised the painting without question. Others whispered doubts but were too afraid to speak up. She felt a sense of responsibility. Even though she was young and her voice was small, she had the knowledge and the courage to challenge what everyone else accepted as truth. She didn't know yet how she would do it, but she felt that staying silent was not an option. One afternoon, the collector hosted a special event to show the painting to a select group of wealthy friends. The mansion was filled with laughter, fine wine, and chatter. The daughter watched from the corner, notebook in hand, observing the reactions of everyone. They all marveled at the painting, praising its colors and claiming it was flawless. The daughter's stomach twisted. She knew they were all being fooled. She thought about how she could find the right moment to speak up. She wanted to be sure, prepared, and convincing. That evening, she stayed behind again, analyzing the painting under the dim light of her small lamp. She compared every detail, every shadow, every brushstroke. She noticed that the paint on the edges seemed newer than the center, suggesting it might have been tampered with. There were tiny marks that didn't match the artist's typical technique. She wrote down everything meticulously, making sure that when she spoke, she could explain each inconsistency clearly. Her confidence grew, even as her nervousness remained. She knew she was onto something important, something that could change the art world and reveal a massive deception. For the first time, the daughter felt the weight of responsibility. She was just a young girl from a humble family, yet she held knowledge that could uncover a lie worth hundreds of millions. She thought about the consequences, the embarrassment of the collector, the reaction of the art world, and the possible danger of speaking out. Still, she also felt a deep sense of purpose. She couldn't ignore the truth, and she couldn't let the forgery continue to fool everyone. She promised herself that when the time came, she would speak up, and she would do it with clarity and courage. The mansion continued its usual rhythm of luxury and wealth, unaware that a young girl was quietly preparing to shake the foundation of its most prized possession. Every day, she grew more confident in her observations and more certain of her ability to expose the truth. Her notebook became a treasure of knowledge, filled with sketches, notes, and comparisons. She felt a mix of excitement, fear, and determination that kept her awake at night. She was ready to face whatever challenges came next, knowing that her discovery could make history and reveal the truth behind a $300 million art forgery. After days of careful observation, the maid's daughter could no longer ignore her suspicions about the painting. She spent her mornings helping her mother with chores and her afternoons sneaking away to study the masterpiece in silence. Every small detail fascinated her, but also troubled her. She knew she had to be certain before saying anything, because the painting was worth more than most people could imagine. One small mistake could ruin her credibility or even put her in danger. She needed evidence, not just feelings or guesses. She started visiting the local libraries after finishing her tasks at the mansion. There, she searched through old art books, catalogs, and historical documents to find authentic works by the same artist. She spent hours comparing colors, textures, and brushstrokes. She learned that even the smallest deviation in technique could reveal a fake. She copied sketches, wrote down notes, and created charts in her notebook. Each day, her understanding of the artist grew stronger, and so did her confidence that something was wrong with the mansion's painting. At the same time, she began quietly observing the people around her. The collector was a proud man, always eager to impress his guests with his newest acquisition. He spoke with authority, describing the painting's history and claiming it had been lost for decades. Guests nodded, impressed by his knowledge, but he didn't know that the young maid's daughter was watching every word, analyzing every claim. She noticed small inconsistencies in the stories he told. The way he hesitated when asked about certain details made her more curious. Was he aware that the painting could be fake, or was he completely deceived like everyone else? The staff at the mansion noticed the painting too, but none of them had her insight. Most were content to clean around it, dust its frame, and admire its beauty from afar. Some whispered doubts to each other, but fear of the collector kept them silent. The maid's daughter, however, felt a strong sense of responsibility. She could not allow the truth to remain hidden, especially when so many people trusted the painting's authenticity. Her knowledge of the artist and her careful observations gave her an advantage that no one else had. One evening, she decided to examine the painting more closely using natural light. She waited until the sun was low, casting soft shadows across the room. The details she had noticed under artificial light became even clearer. She saw tiny cracks in the paint, uneven layering, and colors that seemed slightly off. The signature, which everyone admired, looked different from the authentic ones she had studied. Her heart raced as she realized that these small imperfections confirmed her suspicion. The painting was a forgery. The daughter realized that identifying the fake was only the first step. She had to find a way to prove it convincingly. She could not rely on her own observations alone. She needed experts. But she also had to plan carefully. The collector was powerful, and accusing him or the auction of fraud without proof could be dangerous. She decided to gather information discreetly, preparing herself for the right moment to reveal the truth. Her notebook became her secret weapon, filled with detailed comparisons, sketches, and notes on the artist's authentic techniques. She also began to pay attention to the painting's history. She asked herself questions that no one else seemed to consider. Why had it appeared at a private auction instead of a public gallery? Why was the certificate of authenticity unusually clean and perfect? Why had experts missed these small details? Each question led her to another clue, and the puzzle slowly began to make sense. She realized that she might be uncovering a case of intentional forgery, a story that could change the art world forever. While researching, she discovered stories of past forgeries and scams. Famous artworks had been faked and sold for millions, sometimes deceiving collectors for years. She read about experts who had been fooled and the meticulous methods used to create convincing replicas. These stories fascinated her and gave her hope. If others had exposed forgeries, she could do it too. She knew it would require courage, patience, and careful planning, but she felt ready. Each piece of knowledge strengthened her resolve. Her nights were spent studying more than just the painting. She learned about the artist's life, his influences, and the techniques he used in different periods. She memorized small details like the way he signed his works or how he layered colors to create depth. Every fact became a piece of evidence, and every observation became a step closer to exposing the truth. Her understanding of art deepened beyond what she could have imagined, and with it grew a quiet confidence that she could make a difference. The more she learned, the more she noticed that others in the mansion treated the painting like a trophy rather than a work of art. Guests admired its value but rarely considered its authenticity. The collector spoke with pride, not humility, and the staff focused on appearances. Only the maid's daughter saw the inconsistencies clearly, and she realized how alone she was in this mission. Yet, she did not feel discouraged. She knew that knowledge and careful observation were more powerful than wealth or authority. One afternoon, she decided to test her theory subtly. She asked a visiting art student, who had come to see the mansion's collection, a few questions about the painting. She spoke about technique and style, mentioning small details she had noticed. The student listened, fascinated, and agreed that something seemed unusual. Although the conversation was brief, it gave her hope that others might recognize the truth if it were presented carefully. She realized that she needed allies who could validate her observations and support her when the time came to reveal the forgery. Meanwhile, she kept up her daily chores without raising suspicion. She cleaned, dusted, and helped serve guests while secretly analyzing the painting in her mind. She became skilled at observing unnoticed, writing notes in her mind when she couldn't physically record them. Her eyes were always searching, looking for inconsistencies, unusual brushstrokes, and details that others missed. The painting was no longer just an object in the mansion. It had become a puzzle that she was determined to solve. The daughter's mother noticed her growing interest and curiosity. She gently encouraged her to follow her instincts and trust her knowledge, though she warned her to be careful. The mother understood the power of courage combined with wisdom, and she supported her daughter from the shadows. This quiet encouragement gave the daughter confidence, reinforcing her belief that she could uncover the truth without endangering herself or her family. As days passed, the tension in the mansion increased. The collector's excitement about the painting grew, and he began planning another event to showcase it to even more important guests. The daughter knew this would be her opportunity to act, but she had to be fully prepared. She reviewed her notes, memorized details, and practiced explaining the inconsistencies clearly and logically. She wanted to be calm, confident, and convincing when the moment arrived. She knew that a single mistake could make everyone dismiss her, so preparation became her focus. The daughter also considered the wider implications. If the painting was indeed a forgery, it could affect auctions, collectors, and museums worldwide. The news could shake the art world and change how people viewed authenticity and value. She felt a sense of responsibility that went beyond the mansion, beyond the collector, and beyond herself. She realized that truth and integrity mattered more than fear or wealth. This thought strengthened her resolve and fueled her determination to uncover the forgery, no matter how challenging it might be. As she continued her research and observations, she discovered a few more subtle clues that had gone unnoticed. Tiny cracks, unusual textures, and inconsistencies in color hinted at tampering. Some details suggested that the painting had been modified to appear older and more authentic than it actually was. These discoveries confirmed her suspicion that the forgery was deliberate and sophisticated. Her excitement grew with each new piece of evidence, but so did her awareness of the stakes. Exposing the forgery would not be easy, and she needed to be ready for any reaction from the collector and the world. The maid's daughter also thought about how she would present her findings. She knew that simply stating the painting was fake would not be enough. She had to explain her reasoning, provide evidence, and show her understanding of the artist's techniques. She practiced speaking clearly and logically, imagining herself in front of the collector and guests. She visualized every step, from pointing out inconsistencies to explaining historical context, and she rehearsed how to stay calm under pressure. This preparation became her secret strength, giving her confidence that she could face the moment when truth and courage would meet. As the days turned into weeks, the daughter's determination never wavered. She continued to balance her chores, research, and careful observations. She knew that the right moment was coming, and she wanted to be ready. The mansion continued its rhythm of luxury and elegance, unaware that a young girl was quietly preparing to reveal a truth that could shake its very foundation. Her knowledge, patience, and courage were building toward a moment that could change everything. Finally, after weeks of study and preparation, the maid's daughter felt that she had gathered enough evidence. She knew the inconsistencies, the signs of tampering, and the differences from authentic works so well that she could explain them clearly. She felt a mix of excitement and fear, knowing that her next steps would be crucial. She had observed, studied, and prepared for this moment, and she was ready to take the risk. The painting was no longer just a mystery. It was a challenge she was determined to meet, and she knew that the truth must be revealed. The day had finally come when the collector decided to host a private gathering to show off the new painting. The mansion was alive with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and soft music playing in the background. Guests arrived, dressed in elegant attire, eager to see the masterpiece that was said to be worth $300 million. The collector moved among them proudly, speaking with confidence about the painting's history and the story of its discovery. Everyone seemed impressed, nodding and admiring the colors, the brushwork, and the artist's signature. But in the corner, the maid's daughter stood quietly, notebook clutched in her hands, her eyes fixed on the painting. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, memorizing every detail, and now it was time to act. As the guests admired the painting, the daughter observed their reactions closely. Some were dazzled by the fame and the price, unable to see beyond the surface. Others whispered among themselves, perhaps sensing something unusual but too intimidated to speak. The collector was in his element, enjoying the attention and praise. He spoke about the artist, about how rare the work was, and how fortunate he was to have acquired it. The daughter felt her heart race. This was the moment when she had to speak, but she also knew she had to be careful. One wrong word could make her seem foolish or disrespectful. She waited until the conversation around the painting quieted, then stepped forward. Her voice was calm but clear as she began speaking in perfect Italian, a skill that had always set her apart. She addressed the collector directly, pointing to specific parts of the painting and explaining the inconsistencies she had studied so carefully. She spoke about brushstrokes that didn't match the artist's known technique, colors that were slightly off, and a signature that differed from authentic works. Her words were precise, backed by evidence she had gathered over weeks of careful observation and research. The room fell silent. Guests turned to look at her, surprised that a young maid's daughter would speak with such authority. The collector's confident smile faltered as he listened to her detailed explanation. He tried to interrupt, but she continued, explaining each inconsistency logically and clearly. She spoke about historical context, the artist's usual methods, and how tiny details revealed the painting's true nature. Her voice was steady, her tone respectful but firm, and her knowledge undeniable. Some guests exchanged whispers, impressed by her confidence and depth of understanding. They had expected praise for the collector, not a young girl pointing out flaws in a $300 million painting. The daughter noticed their reactions and felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. She knew that her words had to be compelling enough to convince experts, the collector, and everyone else present. She continued to explain, carefully comparing the painting to authentic works and pointing out subtle differences that revealed the forgery. The collector's face turned pale. He could not ignore her observations, even if he wanted to. He had spent years building his reputation as a knowledgeable collector, and now a young girl was challenging the authenticity of his prized possession. His guests began asking questions, and he realized that her knowledge was impressive and accurate. He tried to defend the painting, claiming that the differences were minor, but the daughter calmly explained why each inconsistency mattered. Her preparation, her research, and her confidence left no room for doubt. Meanwhile, the staff watched in amazement. They had known the daughter was smart and observant, but they had never seen her speak with such authority. Her mother stood quietly nearby, proud and a little anxious. She understood the risk her daughter was taking, but also recognized the importance of telling the truth. The room felt tense, a mix of admiration, surprise, and curiosity. Everyone present realized that this was no ordinary observation. It was an informed and courageous challenge to what they had all accepted as fact. The daughter continued, explaining how the painting had been tampered with, and how small details suggested deliberate forgery. She spoke about the auction, the certificate of authenticity, and how experts had been deceived. Her explanation was logical, clear, and detailed, leaving no room for argument. She had transformed her weeks of careful study into a compelling presentation that stunned everyone in the room. The collector tried to regain his composure, but the evidence was overwhelming, and the guests began to murmur among themselves, recognizing the validity of her observations. After several minutes, the daughter concluded her explanation. She had spoken with confidence, respect, and precision, presenting her findings in a way that could not be dismissed. The room was silent for a moment, then filled with quiet whispers and amazed expressions. Guests who had previously admired the painting with unquestioning awe now looked at it with new eyes, noticing the inconsistencies she had pointed out. The collector, faced with undeniable evidence, could not maintain his earlier confidence. He realized that the young maid's daughter had uncovered a truth that even he had not seen. Experts who had been invited to the gathering were called in to examine the painting more closely. They checked her observations against their own knowledge and confirmed that she had identified genuine inconsistencies. The painting, previously celebrated as a masterpiece, was indeed a forgery. The young maid's daughter had successfully exposed it, using her knowledge, careful observation, and courage. The room filled with a mixture of awe, admiration, and disbelief. People who had come to admire the painting left with a new understanding, and the collector faced the reality of the forgery he had unknowingly displayed. The daughter's courage did not go unnoticed. Journalists and art historians praised her for her insight and determination. The story of a young girl uncovering a $300 million forgery quickly spread, inspiring others to trust their knowledge and speak up when they saw the truth. The collector, although embarrassed, acknowledged her role in uncovering the forgery and praised her understanding of art and history. The mansion, once a place of unquestioned admiration for wealth and status, now recognized the value of intelligence, observation, and courage. Despite the excitement and attention, the daughter remained humble. She did not seek fame or reward, but she felt proud of what she had accomplished. She had demonstrated that knowledge, careful observation, and courage could challenge even the most powerful figures. Her actions not only exposed the forgery, but also highlighted the importance of critical thinking and honesty in a world often dominated by wealth and appearances. She had proven that truth could emerge from unexpected places, and that even someone young and from a humble background could make a significant impact. As the day ended and the guests departed, the daughter returned to her quiet corner in the mansion. She reflected on the events, realizing how much she had learned and how much courage it had taken to speak out. She knew that this was only the beginning of her journey in the art world. Her understanding of art had deepened, her confidence had grown, and she had gained recognition for her knowledge and bravery. She felt a sense of responsibility to continue studying, learning, and protecting the truth in art. The maid watched her daughter with pride, knowing that she had guided her well, and that the young girl's talents had made a real difference. The mansion, once a place of unquestioned authority, had been forever changed by the insights of a keen and courageous mind. The daughter had not only exposed a forgery, but had also reminded everyone that careful observation, knowledge, and the courage to speak could overcome even the most impressive displays of wealth and status. As the night settled over Florence, the mansion felt quieter than usual. The painting, once the centerpiece of admiration, now stood as a symbol of the truth revealed by a young maid's daughter. Her journey had been challenging, filled with careful study, observation, and preparation. But her courage and knowledge had ensured that the truth could not be ignored. She had transformed a simple suspicion into undeniable proof, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The story of the painting, the collector, and the young girl would be remembered for years to come, inspiring others to trust their knowledge, observe carefully, and have the courage to speak when they see the truth. After the maid's daughter had spoken out, the mansion was buzzing with a mixture of shock, admiration, and disbelief. The guests, initially silent from surprise, now whispered among themselves, discussing the courage and knowledge of a young girl who had just exposed a $300 million forgery. The collector, once proud and confident, now faced the reality that he had been deceived. He realized that he needed to take immediate action to verify her claims, not just for his reputation, but for the integrity of his entire collection. Experts in art authentication were called in, and the process of investigation began. The daughter watched carefully as the experts examined the painting. They used magnifying glasses, ultraviolet lights, and chemical tests to analyze the paint and canvas. Every step was meticulous, every observation precise. She had anticipated each test, as she had studied the methods professionals used to detect forgeries. Her notes and sketches were ready, and she followed along quietly, confirming that her suspicions were aligned with the experts' findings. Each discovery made her heart race with both excitement and relief. She knew she had been right, and now the truth was being revealed in front of everyone. The first sign that the painting was indeed a forgery came when the experts examined the layers of paint. They noticed that some areas had been applied much more recently than the rest of the canvas, suggesting that someone had altered the original work. The daughter had observed similar inconsistencies earlier, and seeing them confirmed by experts made her confidence grow. She quietly took notes in her mind, ready to explain her findings to anyone who doubted her observations. Her preparation and careful study had paid off, and she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Next, the experts analyzed the signature on the painting. Using magnification and historical comparison, they discovered subtle differences from the authentic works of the artist. The signature style, spacing, and technique did not match those of genuine pieces. Once again, the daughter's observations proved accurate. Her careful comparison of photographs, books, and other references had allowed her to recognize details that experts confirmed under scrutiny. This step was critical, as signatures are often considered one of the most reliable indicators of authenticity, and she had identified the inconsistencies early on. Chemical tests revealed further evidence. Certain pigments and compounds in the paint were not consistent with materials used during the artist's lifetime. This scientific confirmation added weight to the claim that the painting was a forgery. The daughter had known, based on visual analysis alone, that something was unusual, but seeing the scientific proof validated her instincts and research. The experts were impressed by how accurately she had predicted the issues, and they began to respect her observations as genuinely insightful. The investigation extended beyond the painting itself. Experts examined the certificate of authenticity, tracing its origins and cross-referencing it with auction records and known provenance. They discovered inconsistencies and irregularities that suggested the certificate had been fabricated to make the painting appear legitimate. Once again, the daughter's suspicion about the certificate being too perfect and hurriedly prepared proved correct. Every piece of evidence she had gathered independently aligned with the experts' findings, making her role in uncovering the forgery even more significant. During the investigation, the collector remained tense and quiet. He had spent years building his reputation and amassing a collection he thought was beyond reproach. Now, faced with undeniable proof of deception, he realized the value of honesty, humility, and the importance of listening to others. He had been so focused on the painting's fame and price that he had overlooked the possibility of a forgery. Watching the daughter's insights validated by experts was humbling, and he began to reflect on how easily even experienced collectors could be deceived. The staff of the mansion, who had once viewed the painting as untouchable, now saw it differently. They were amazed at the daughter's courage and intelligence. Many of them had suspected something was off but had been too intimidated to speak up. Her example inspired them to value careful observation and critical thinking. They realized that wealth and status did not guarantee truth, and that sometimes the youngest or most overlooked voices could be the most insightful. As the investigation progressed, news began to spread. Journalists and art historians were contacted, and the story quickly gained attention. The daughter's name began circulating in the art community as the young individual who had exposed a major forgery. Experts praised her understanding of technique, historical accuracy, and careful analysis. She had not only identified the forgery but had done so in a way that respected the collector, the guests, and the process of art authentication. Her ability to combine observation, knowledge, and courage made her an example for others. The experts documented their findings meticulously, creating a detailed report that confirmed the forgery. They explained how the painting had been altered, how the signature did not match authentic works, and how the certificate of authenticity was unreliable. They also praised the daughter for her foresight and careful study, noting that her observations had anticipated much of their scientific and technical analysis. Her role was recognized as pivotal in uncovering the truth, and her insight was celebrated alongside the official findings. The revelation of the forgery had broader implications. Other collectors began reviewing their own acquisitions, museums checked provenance more carefully, and auction houses tightened verification procedures. The daughter's actions had created a ripple effect, influencing the art world beyond the walls of the mansion. Her courage had demonstrated that careful observation and knowledge could protect cultural treasures and maintain integrity in a field where deception could easily thrive. For the daughter, the experience was transformative. She had faced the challenge with preparation, observation, and determination, and she had succeeded. The recognition she received was meaningful, but even more important was the knowledge that she had done the right thing. She had proven that truth mattered more than fear or wealth, and that courage combined with careful study could overcome deception. Her journey in the art world had just begun, but she had already made a lasting impact. The collector, although initially embarrassed and humbled, publicly acknowledged the daughter's role in exposing the forgery. He praised her intelligence, careful observation, and the courage it had taken to speak out. He also took responsibility for the mistake, emphasizing the importance of thorough verification and humility in the pursuit of art. This acknowledgement helped restore his reputation and underscored the lesson that even the most experienced collectors must remain vigilant and open to insights from unexpected sources. The staff and guests left the mansion with a new perspective. They had witnessed a young girl's ability to challenge assumptions, observe carefully, and speak truthfully. Her example inspired others to value knowledge, critical thinking, and the courage to act when something seemed wrong. The mansion itself, once a symbol of wealth and status, became a place remembered for a moment when integrity and observation triumphed over deception. The painting, once admired and celebrated, now stood as a reminder that truth could not be hidden forever. In the following days, the daughter continued her studies, visiting museums, libraries, and galleries to deepen her understanding of art. She remained humble, focusing on learning and growing, but she carried with her the knowledge that she had already made a significant contribution. Her courage had uncovered a major forgery, influenced the art community, and inspired others to trust their instincts and knowledge. She understood that her journey was ongoing, but she felt confident that she was on the right path. The investigation also led to legal and financial consequences for those responsible for the forgery. Authorities pursued the individuals who had created and sold the fake painting, recovering other forged works and preventing further deception. The daughter's role in identifying the forgery had been crucial, and her observations had guided the investigation in the right direction. The case became a well-known example of how careful study, knowledge, and courage could uncover even the most sophisticated deceptions. Through it all, the daughter remained focused on learning and observing. She realized that knowledge was power, but it had to be combined with careful thought, courage, and integrity to make a real difference. Her experience had taught her that truth was worth pursuing, even when it challenged powerful figures or established beliefs. She had proven that even someone young and from a humble background could make a significant impact, and she continued to carry that lesson forward in all her studies and observations. The mansion, once defined by luxury and status, now also represented integrity and careful observation. The painting, though exposed as a forgery, became a symbol of the power of knowledge and courage. Guests, staff, and the collector himself recognized the importance of careful study and the willingness to speak truthfully, even when it was difficult. The young maid's daughter had changed not only the fate of a single painting but had also influenced the values and perspectives of everyone around her. As the investigation concluded, the daughter felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and the weight of a massive forgery, but her preparation, courage, and careful observation had guided her to success. She had learned that knowledge must be combined with action to create change, and that even the smallest voice could reveal the truth. Her role in uncovering the forgery had cemented her place in the art world, and her story would inspire others to trust their knowledge, observe carefully, and have the courage to act when something seemed wrong. The daughter's journey continued, filled with study, observation, and learning. She remained humble, but she carried the confidence of someone who had faced a major challenge and succeeded. The mansion, the collector, and the art community had all been transformed by her actions. Her ability to combine knowledge, observation, and courage had uncovered the truth, exposed a $300 million forgery, and inspired countless others. The story of the painting, the the collector, and the young maid's daughter would be remembered as a moment when integrity and insight triumphed over deception, leaving a lasting impact on the art world. After the forgery had been officially confirmed, the young maid's daughter became known throughout the art community as the girl who had exposed a $300 million fake masterpiece. The news spread quickly, first through Florence, and then to other parts of Italy and the world. Journalists, historians, and collectors were amazed that someone so young and from a humble background had the courage, knowledge, and skill to uncover such a sophisticated deception. Her story was inspiring because it showed that intelligence and determination could make a difference, no matter a person's age or social status. The collector, though initially embarrassed by the mistake, publicly acknowledged her contribution. He praised her careful observations, her deep understanding of the artist, and her courage to speak up. His statement in newspapers and interviews helped restore his credibility while also highlighting the importance of listening to others, even those who might seem unlikely sources of wisdom. The daughter's honesty and humility earned respect not only from the collector but also from art experts and the general public. She had turned a tense and potentially humiliating situation into a lesson in integrity and observation. Meanwhile, the young girl continued her studies. She visited museums, galleries, and libraries, deepening her knowledge of art history and techniques. Every day she learned something new about artists' styles and methods. Her experience with the forgery had shown her that knowledge was not enough on its own. Courage and careful analysis were equally important. She studied meticulously, taking notes, sketching, and memorizing details. She was determined to ensure that she could prevent or identify any future forgery, understanding that her skills could protect cultural treasures and historical works from deception. The daughter also became an inspiration to others, particularly young people who might have thought that they were too small or inexperienced to make a difference. Teachers, art students, and even other collectors used her story as an example of how careful study and courage could challenge assumptions and reveal hidden truths. Workshops and lectures were organized in her name, discussing her methods, observations, and the impact of her discovery. People admired not just the result, the exposure of the forgery, but also the approach she had taken, patient, thorough, respectful, and brave. In the mansion, life slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but things had changed. The staff now saw the daughter in a new light. Her mother, proud of her daughter's achievements, encouraged her to continue pursuing knowledge and to stay curious. The collector himself became more careful in verifying artworks and showed genuine respect for those who questioned or offered observations. The mansion had transformed from a place of unquestioned luxury and pride into a symbol of integrity, careful analysis, and respect for knowledge, thanks to the courage of one young girl. The daughter's recognition brought more opportunities. Experts invited her to participate in discussions, seminars, and exhibitions. They were eager to hear her insights and learn from her methods. She shared her approach to analyzing paintings, her attention to detail, and how she balanced careful observation with courage. Her talks were simple but effective, helping people understand that anyone could contribute to preserving truth and authenticity in art if they were willing to observe closely and think critically. She became a role model for aspiring art historians and young students. As the story gained international attention, other collectors and museums began to take note. They reviewed their own collections and implemented more rigorous verification processes. Her impact reached beyond Florence, changing how art was studied, verified, and appreciated. She demonstrated that even small voices could influence large institutions and that the careful study of details could prevent massive deceptions. Her example reminded the art world that knowledge, integrity, and courage were as important as wealth or fame. The daughter also maintained her humility. Despite her growing fame, she focused on learning, observing, and improving her skills. She continued to spend hours studying art, visiting exhibitions, and learning from experts. She believed that each piece of knowledge was a tool to protect truth and cultural heritage. Her experiences had taught her that the world was full of opportunities for those who were curious, patient, and willing to act with integrity. She did not seek fame for its own sake, but she accepted recognition as a way to inspire others. Her family remained close, and her mother continued to support her journey. They celebrated the daughter's achievements quietly, understanding that the real reward was the ability to make a meaningful difference. The mother shared her pride and reinforced the importance of staying grounded, humble, and focused on learning. Their bond strengthened as they shared the experience of seeing a young girl rise to challenge assumptions and make history in the art world. Together, they reflected on the lessons learned. Courage, careful study, honesty, and the willingness to act were powerful tools for anyone. Meanwhile, the collector took further steps to restore confidence in his collection. He ensured that each piece was verified and authenticated carefully, using experts and modern methods. He also established educational programs and workshops, inspired by the daughter's story, to teach staff and visitors about art authentication and observation. He became an advocate for integrity in the art world, emphasizing the importance of humility, careful research, and listening to insights from unexpected sources. The daughter's actions had left a permanent mark on his approach and philosophy. The young girl also inspired change beyond the mansion. Schools, museums, and art institutions began to highlight the importance of critical thinking, observation, and courage. Programs were created to teach young people how to analyze art, question assumptions, and speak up when they noticed inconsistencies. Her story was shared in classrooms and workshops, emphasizing that anyone, regardless of age or background, could make a significant impact. The lessons she embodied: curiosity, attention to detail, honesty, and courage, became guiding principles for students and professionals alike. As time passed, the daughter continued to refine her skills. She learned new techniques, studied the works of additional artists, and kept track of developments in art authentication. Her early experience with the $300 million forgery had shown her that knowledge alone was not enough. Careful observation and courage to act were equally important. She became an expert in analyzing artworks and advising others, combining her natural talent with continuous study and practice. Her journey was ongoing, and every new challenge strengthened her abilities and confidence. Despite all her recognition and accomplishments, the daughter remained humble. She understood that the true reward was not fame or praise, but the ability to protect cultural heritage and reveal truth. She continued to approach each artwork with patience, curiosity, and respect. She taught others to do the same, showing that careful observation, knowledge, and courage could make a real difference. Her story became a source of inspiration for anyone who wanted to challenge assumptions, speak up for truth, and use their skills to make a positive impact. The mansion itself became a place of learning and respect for art. Visitors were educated not just about the value of the collection, but also about the importance of authenticity, observation, and integrity. The painting, although exposed as a forgery, became an educational tool, demonstrating how deception could be uncovered through careful study. The collector, staff, and guests all recognized the importance of the lessons learned, and the mansion's legacy shifted from pure wealth and status to knowledge, honesty, and critical thinking. In the end, the young maid's daughter had changed more than just the fate of a single painting. She had influenced the way the art community viewed authenticity, inspired countless individuals to trust their knowledge, and left a lasting impact on Florence and beyond. Her courage and careful study had proven that even the smallest or youngest voices could reveal truth, challenge deception, and inspire change. She had become a symbol of integrity, observation, and bravery in the art world, showing that knowledge, courage, and humility could overcome deception and transform communities. The story concluded with the daughter continuing her studies, learning from experts, and inspiring others. She remained grounded, humble, and dedicated to her mission of protecting truth in art. The mansion, the collector, the staff, and the wider art community all benefited from her insight and bravery. Her journey was ongoing, but her impact was already profound. The young girl who had once quietly observed a suspicious painting had become a force for truth, education, and inspiration. Her story would be remembered for generations, encouraging others to study carefully, observe keenly, and act with courage whenever they encountered deception or dishonesty. In the end, knowledge, integrity, and courage proved more powerful than wealth, status, or deception, leaving a lasting legacy shaped by a single, determined, and remarkable young mind.